everybody. I'm Laura Trump coming to you from my home in New York. At a time when we need peace and security more than ever, the left is enabling chaos and destruction in our streets. Joining me is the senior legal advisor to the Trump campaign, Jenna Ellis. Jenna, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Laura.
So, following several nights of violent protests across the country, President Trump announced his plans to restore order. Look at this.
I am taking immediate presidential action to stop the violence and restore security and safety in America. I am mobilizing all available federal resources, civilian and military, to stop the rioting and looting, to end the destruction and arson, and to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans, including your Second Amendment rights.
All right, so Jenna, it seems like some of these governors really are tolerating violence and don't seem that interested to do much about it. What is going on here?
Yes, I think it's really interesting, Laura, that we're seeing this absolute tyranny and also absolute anarchy simultaneously in these Democrat-led cities and states. And so this is completely antithetical to the American Constitution and our American system of government. And I am so proud of President Trump for his stance for the Constitution, for the rule of law, because we as the people who our Declaration of Independence acknowledges that that God gives us our rights. It's not our government, but we, the people, through our consent, give specific limited powers to the government in order to preserve and protect those rights. Now, they have to be limited so that we don't experience the tyranny that a lot of the Democrat governors are trying to impose, but they're also legitimate authority and legitimate powers so that we can combat this anarchy and the destruction of civil society. So what I would say to the American people is that President Trump understands this so clearly. He understands his oath of office. He loves America. And through the legitimate powers that are vested in the executive branch, he is restoring law and order through those legitimate means. And it's not our system of government that's the problem. It's these Democrat governors who are overreaching on the one hand with their orders that are imposing tyranny, and they're destroying people's livelihoods and businesses on one hand. But then on the other hand, they're not exercising their legitimate authority to quell these protests and these riots. And that's why voting is so incredibly important, from the presidential election all the way down ticket, for our state and local leaders to make sure that they understand the purpose of government is to make sure to protect our rights so that we have genuine liberty and freedom throughout our country.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. By the way, the difference between how some of these governors were acting about a month ago versus today, they were well overstepping their bounds in terms of governing their states and telling people, we're limiting your rights, your God-given rights as an American citizen. Now, all of a sudden, they're refusing to uphold the law. They're refusing to arrest people who are causing all this destruction and chaos, burning down buildings, looting stores. It seems like they went from one extreme to another, but doesn't this follow a pattern of chaos, Jenna, where Democrat governors are trying to exploit the pandemic to damage our economy and threaten our election integrity?
Absolutely. And this is the progressive leftist agenda. And we've seen this so clearly through every single candidate that stood on that stage to get the Democrat nomination, including Joe Biden, including Kamala Harris, including all of these who are now supporting the bailouts for these anarchists to just go out and create more lawlessness and chaos. If you look at what Joe Biden has said, he wants to fundamentally transform America. And that is against the nature of what we, the people, founded here in America for a civil society that does value and champion liberty and freedom. And so this absolute destruction can't be tolerated. President Trump is not going to tolerate it. But also these governors who are trying to impose their will. This is a worldview of absolute chaos, of going toward the Marxist nihilistic worldview that says that there's no legitimate authority other than what the state wants to impose on you. And so that's not what our founding fathers recognized. That's not what President Trump understands with our constitutional republic. And we, the people, as Americans, have to return to civics and return to the understanding that our rights are God-given and that we can protect and preserve genuine liberty and freedom. That's the American dream. And that's what President Trump is so strongly fighting for. And so when we talk about election integrity, Laura, this is why it's so incredibly important to vote in our state and local elections as well as the presidential election. And the Democrats know that they can't win fair and square. So they are wanting to manipulate the rules at every single turn. They're wanting to manipulate our election system to try to impose a nationwide mail-in voting. They're trying to impose ballot harvesting and all of these ways that are ripe for fraud so that they can overturn elections in America. We've seen this happen. We've seen the fraud over all of the examples that we have across the country. And we can't allow that to happen. So the RNC and the Trump campaign has jointly put together a website called protectthevote.com, where you can see our principles for election integrity and also where we're fighting in court to make sure that your vote and your voice is heard, because free and fair elections are also constitutionally required. That's our privilege in America, to be able to vote and select and prefer the leaders that we put in office to make sure that they will protect and preserve our rights. And Democrats don't want that. They only want more power for them, and they want to create and multiply this chaos instead of returning to law and order like President Trump absolutely is.
Yeah, it's an important time in our history. It's an important time for the future of this country. And you said it, look, on November 3rd, you need to get out and you need to vote. Make sure you are voting the right way. We see, Jenna, why it's so important, not just to make sure that you're voting for President Trump at the top of the ticket, but all the way down voting for Republicans, why you should pay attention to local races as well, because we see right now what happens when you have mayors and governors who are really not imposing laws, not upholding their end of the bargain. They take an oath to protect their citizens. It's not happening in a lot of cases. Switching gears quickly, if you can believe it, we're still in the midst of coronavirus. Feels like it was so long ago, but we're still in it. And thanks to President Trump's leadership, we are speeding our way towards a vaccine. But Jenna, there's concern out there about a vaccine possibly being mandated. Can you talk a little bit about that and why this president would never mandate a vaccine in this country?
Yeah, this is so incredibly important, Laura, because President Trump has been very clear that with this solution, this advance in medical technology, this is for the benefit of Americans. He's not going to mandate this from a federal level. He has always championed federalism and the understanding that the federal government will provide the resources, the recommendations through the CDC and federal resources in order to help communities get back to our normal American way of life. But for those who've been concerned about a mandatory vaccine, through our nation's history, through the Supreme Court precedent, there has never been a precedent where the Supreme Court has held that the government could compel you by literally requiring you to take the vaccine. There have been other of my colleagues who I sincerely respect, but they're wrong on this view that the Supreme Court would ever impose a situation where the government would literally take you from your home, take you down to the local hospital and plunge a needle into your arm. That's just simply not going to happen. Not only from President Trump would never mandate that, but the Supreme Court doesn't mandate that. And so if there are communities that do on the state and local level have a vaccine that's required for certain purposes, like a flu shot, like other things that we've seen across the country, then there may only be some sort of civil penalty for that. But even that would be something that the state would have the burden of proof to show why that's absolutely necessary and they have a compelling interest. So I think that Americans can be very safe and secure that this type of resource will only be just that, a resource and something that's voluntary. If you as a specific member of a more at-risk community want to take this like a flu shot, then you'll have that ability and you'll have access to that vaccine. But this is not something that the president has ever suggested that he's going to impose.
Yeah, in fact, I think somebody asked him about that not too long ago, and I remember him specifically saying, I'm sure a lot of people will want the vaccine, and I'm sure a lot of other people won't. So he, from the very beginning, has been very clear on this. Jenna, very important stuff. As always, you clarify everything and you make it easy for us to understand. So thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Laura.
While the left focuses on chaos and destruction, President Trump is focusing on solutions for 4 more years. That's the real news for today. If you'd like to get involved with Team Trump, go to DonaldJTrump.com or download the official Trump 2020 app from the App Store or the Google Play Store. I'm Lara Trump, coming to you from my home in New York. Thanks for joining us, everybody.